Welcome and thank you for joining us today for AI-Driven Networks, Leveling Up Network Management. My name is Raleigh Gould and I'll be moderating today's event. Our featured speaker is Shamus McGillicuddy, VP of Research covering Network Management at EMA. Shamus has more than 16 years of experience in the IT industry as an industry analyst and journalist. His research focuses on all aspects of managing enterprise networks. And before I hand things over to Shamus, I wanted the audience to know that Shamus will be concluding his presentation by taking your questions. Feel free to log them anytime by using the Q&A functionality. Also, today's event is being recorded and you will receive a follow-up email from EMA with the on-demand recording and additional information about this new research. So I hope you'll check that email out. And now I'd like to go ahead and turn things over to our featured speaker, Shamus McGillicuddy. Shamus.
Thank you, Raleigh, and thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Before I move forward, I just want to thank the sponsors of this research for making it possible for me to survey the market and find out what's going on with AI-driven networking. As some of you may know, EMA conducts a lot of multi-sponsor market research where we solicit people to vendors to financially support our independent research. They get some benefits out of that, such as co-ownership of the data and other opportunities to leverage market insight and content marketing. But for the most part, they don't really know what the data is going to reveal, and they do not get to see the report or these slides of this webinar before they actually are presented to the public. So they are basically being generous in helping me do this research. So thank you to Broadcom, Juniper Networks, and VMware, 3 companies that are obviously, if you are familiar with them, quite interested in AIOps, AI-driven network management, and other related topics. The agenda for today's session, we're going to talk about research goals and methodology and just what is it that we're talking about here in general when I talk about AI-driven network management. Then we'll talk about how do you get there? Like, what do you do to get to having, like, what are people doing to get AI-driven network management today? Where are they going? How are they figuring out what's working for them? Then we'll talk about what kinds of benefits network engineering and operations teams experience when they consume this technology. And then we'll look at, we're seeing that an increasing number of companies are having success with this stuff, but there's still a lot of organizations out there that are trying to find the right path. They're experiencing challenges, pain points. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end before giving you some tips on how to succeed. So research goals and methodology. AI hype is really, really high right now. I made a joke the other day that probably wasn't very original, that everyone that was really into cryptocurrency last year is now really into AI. If you go trawling through all the bots and trolls on Twitter, you'll see examples of that. But it seemed to really, I mean, it's been sort of bubbling up for the past few years with AIOps and related technologies, but with ChatGPT coming along out of OpenAI, it really sort of reached a peak of hype. ChatGPT, you've all probably heard of it. If you're on this webinar, a large language model, that basically you can ask it any question, give it any sort of information, and it will come back at you with some really sophisticated, if not high quality content. Like, I've talked to people who use it to write configs for routers and create software, or at least bad software, debug code, write college entry essays, all kinds of stuff. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, that created really a lot of hype, and then like Google said me too, and pulled Bard out from behind the curtains. They'd been developing it for a few years. Bard is their answer to ChatGPT. But on the other side of things, like, I've been tracking interest in AI-driven network management using artificial intelligence, machine learning, and other technologies to optimize and automate network management. A lot of people will often use the term AIOps, a word or acronym of some kind, I guess you could say, coined by another analyst firm, which I think stands for AI for IT operations, and is defined as the use of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and other advanced algorithms in combination with other technologies like big data to create IT management solutions that are, intelligent and can automate processes and like event correlation and things like that. So we looked at that in 2021, where we surveyed a few hundred people about what their experiences were back then. More recently, my colleague at EMA, Valerie O'Connell, published just a month and a half ago, Automation, AI, and the Rise of Service Ops, that looked at AI and AIOps through the lens of IT service management and how automation and AI is improving that. So, it's something EMA is focused on. It's something the world is focused on. And like I said, I published research in 2021, and this 2023 research is an attempt to update that and answer some outstanding questions. In 2021, when we surveyed networking professionals who actually had experience with solutions that apply AI-like technologies to network management, we asked them, do you think this stuff is going to lead to better business outcomes for you? Like, is it going to not only improve network management, but provide benefits to your company? 90% said yes. Some, I think, like 54% had strong agreement, I think, maybe, and then the others were somewhat in agreement. But yeah, 90% saw some opportunity for that. And then, but only 3% at that time, 2 years ago, felt that they had been completely successful with it so far. Like a lot of them saw room for improvement. They were giving themselves like a 6 out of 10, and others, a smaller number, were giving themselves a 3 out of 10. Right? Most of them said, we need to be doing better with this stuff. It has to deliver on its promise more completely than it is right now. So research goals for 2023 was, do people still believe in this technology? Do they still think it's going to improve the bottom line for their employer? Are they doing a better job with using it? And how did they get there? The methodology was primarily a survey of 250 North American IT stakeholders who either have done extensive evaluation of these technologies and or implemented them for their organization and or use them to manage their networks. So they're all currently engaged and knowledgeable about how AI technologies and machine learning and AIOps, all of that can be used to manage networking more efficiently, effectively. And you see here on the slides like who they are, and a lot of people, most of them are like in middle management in IT, but there also is a mix of executives and like technical personnel. They're from various silos. You see a lot of people from IT tool engineering teams, the CIO's office, a lot of IT network operations, some security, some network engineering, some cloud ops. Everything from the lower mid-market up to the very large enterprise is represented in terms of headcount and revenue, like $50 million companies, multi-billion-dollar companies, more than a dozen industries represented, but you can see a lot of traditional enterprise in there, like manufacturing, the financial sector, retail. So how do you get AI-driven network management? We asked these people who are, moving forward with this stuff, which of the following describes how you apply AI to network management? And we'll get into like how they use, like how it, what use cases they're pursuing and stuff in a second, but like just how you getting this stuff into your environment. And you see most of them are taking a two-pronged approach. They have network management tool vendors that are offering features or individual products that apply this to network management. They're also, most of them, using stuff from their network infrastructure vendors. So that represents sort of like an easier path towards consumption, because they're probably working with an incumbent vendor who's come along and said, hey, we're now doing AI for this, and this is great. Why don't you try it out? No additional cost, or maybe a little bit extra cost, depending. And so that's the path most of them take. But you also see a lot of them are using domain agnostic AIOps solutions. So things that For instance, like I've talked to multiple people in network operations who tell me they have a cross-domain AIOps solution from like maybe an IT service management vendor, an AIOps specialist that's doing event correlation. They feed all the different domains in IT are feeding data from their individual tools into it, and it is like enriching tickets. It's doing event management and intelligent escalation and stuff like that. Doesn't necessarily function as like an expert system on networking in particular, but it's helping bring different groups together and operate more effectively as a unit. And then almost 19% of them told me they're doing homegrown AI ML technology, which shocked me. That was pretty high. I didn't expect that many. But I will say I've seen it anecdotally too. Like as part of this research, I also like to talk to people one-on-one, and I use like online sources to find those people. And one source I use is LinkedIn. And while I was trawling LinkedIn for people who actually have experience with this stuff, I kept finding data scientists who worked for a $60 billion financial services company in North America. And all of them on their LinkedIn profile said that they were building AIOps solutions inside this bank. There's probably like 10, 12 of them, all building an internally developed homegrown AI solution. I also saw that that same bank had data scientists on different projects, such as working on AI-driven privacy solutions and AI-driven investment solutions. And it became apparent to me that they got like AI across the board, not just in the IT operations, but the entire business. And not just networking, but the entire IT stack. And you see that, on the right, you see we asked these people, looking beyond network management, would you say that your organization has made it a priority to apply AI technologies to IT management? 84% said it was a high priority to do that. Like, and then a smaller number said low priority, and then very, very small number said no priority at all. Like, we don't care about it. But which makes sense because all these people are engaged with AI already, right? So it's kind of biased in favor of that. But what we did see was like people who said that they were that IT management in general being optimized by AI technologies or enriched by AI technologies. When that was a high priority for them, they tended to do better with the technology we're talking about here today, which is AI applied to network management. People who said it was a lower priority were having more trouble. So what that tells you is when the CIO is steering the ship towards AI-driven operations, the people who are in the networking silo trying to transform network management with AI, they're having a better time of it. And that makes perfect sense when you think about it. And the same applies to budgeting. 94% of the people in the survey told us their organization is allocating budget to the application of AI to IT management in general. And when that was happening, people were tending to be more successful with their efforts around network management and AI as well. So makes sense, but it's just, it sort of reinforces the idea that, IT needs to lead from the top to make this work. Most organizations don't really feel that they're equipped to evaluate this stuff. So as you're consuming it, like, how do you know it works, right? And so on the left-hand side, you see a chart. It's a little busy, but we asked people to evaluate, to assess the effectiveness of their organization to evaluate AI technology applied to network management. And the blue is, are they good at evaluating stuff that's specifically designed to address network management? Like, think your network management tool vendor introduced AI stuff. Do you know how to figure out if it's doing anything for you? Or your switching and Wi-Fi vendor, your SD-WAN vendor, your data center vendor, your routing vendor, they introduced AI stuff that enriches their product. Like, do you know if you can you figure out if it works or not? So in the blue, that's that. And you see 41% say they're very effective. 40% say they're slightly effective. It's an important distinction. The 40% are admitting that they're okay, but they could be doing better. So softness there. And then, more than 12%, almost 13% say we're not doing well at all. I'm figuring out if this works. And then they're a little less confident in their ability to evaluate the domain agnostic stuff that might be implemented without them having full input into it. If they're on the network engineering and network operations team, they're like, well, that's being implemented from the top down. I don't have a lot of say. But from what I'm seeing, they don't really know much about networking, and so they're implementing this and telling us to use it. I'm not really happy with it. So you see a little more softness there, and their self-assessment of evaluating this stuff. And there's a lot of difference depending on what silo these people are in. So like I said, network engineering and NetOps teams are more pessimistic about their ability as an organization to evaluate this stuff than the CIO's office, the cloud ops team, and the IT tool engineering team. IT tool engineering team makes sense that they'd feel pretty optimistic because it's their job to select, buy, implement, and enable tools for the other teams to use. So it makes sense that they'd feel stronger about their ability to evaluate AI stuff. CIOs, people who live in the CIO suite are living on cloud 9, and they think everything's going well until someone tells them there's a fire. You see in the lower right how people are typically evaluating this stuff. The big opportunity here is explainable AI. Like, that's an academic term that refers to the discipline of developing AI solutions that are capable of explaining to the humans that they interact with how they reached a conclusion, or made a recommendation, achieved an insight, like how, making it transparent in like a high level way to the user, doing things like probability scores or decision trees, maybe like conversational AI saying, I've looked at this and I think it means this, but it also could mean that, but and you could try this. There also, majority of them were just having lots of conversations about algorithms with their vendors, meaning that they probably want to understand like what algorithms are actually innovative and which ones are just like, being relabeled as AI, even, and a new secret sauce, even though they've been around and in use by the industry for 20 years. Being able to distinguish, at a high level, how people are, what kinds of algorithms they're using, how they're training them, like what data do you look at, like how do you train your AI systems to know what networking is. Being able to have those conversations with the vendors is important to them. And also, their majority of them say industry analyst engagement. That's people like me in these webinars, and the report that this webinar is based on, and consulting with us and all that. And then other secondary things, vendor content, like data sheets and white papers and stuff, and proofs of concept, just like getting something in your environment and playing with it and seeing if it actually works. Can't beat that, but that's actually a secondary priority. The other stuff's more important, as listed above. So that's how they get this stuff in and figure out if it works. Like, how does it help? These are the top use cases, or these are all the use cases I asked them about. Network optimization, just making the network more, designing the network to fit the needs of the business. Traffic engineering to take the shortest route possible, all that stuff. That's the big opportunity that people are looking at. Then you see automated troubleshooting, not autonomous networking, which is at the bottom list, but automated troubleshooting, which is being able to automate pieces like problem isolation, root cause analysis, making suggestions for remediation that you could implement with a click of a button, perhaps, or maybe something a little more complex than that, depending on the tool. Intelligent alerting and escalations, just being better at like sending useful information to the right people, which, a lot of companies, when they're implementing an IT management tool, they'll spend months like tuning the alerts and things so that that can happen. AI will do it automatically with the right training and the right technology. And then vendor management's a big opportunity as well. That's automating the whole process of like interacting with your customer support organization. Maybe they are using AI to resolve issues for you more quickly, but also like getting smarter about software updates, patching vulnerabilities. Like, how, if do I need to patch this? Tell me, computer brain, does this need to be patched in my network? And if so, how will it affect my network? And the list goes on and on and on. Everything in red is preferred by people who told us that they're having the most success with AI, which suggests those are things that you might want to target. The network optimization piece, the vendor management piece, digital network twin, that's a concept that's been around for a while. It's often referred to as network modeling, sometimes network verification, network simulation. It's just being able to understand how your network behaves based on, for instance, how it's configured, and understanding how changes to configuration might change how your network operates. And then anomaly detection, very low-hanging fruit. That's often one of the first use cases people offer in terms of vendors. A lot of times when a vendor comes to market with an AIOps solution and I listen to what they're talking about, I'm like, oh, okay, it's anomaly detection. But then what do you do about the anomaly? Do you know how to deal with the anomaly now that you've detected it? That's the next thing to do, which can fall into something like automated troubleshooting. Benefits, like the benefits to your company and your team when you apply AI to network management. Again, network optimization at the top. So it's a use case, but it's also a benefit. You've optimized your network, and that's very good for the business. But also agility, being able to respond to the changing needs of a business. Hey, this is going to happen at Christmas time. This is going to happen in an hour. Can you help us? Improve security and compliance is another big secondary one. And that one was experienced more often by people who are having the most success with using this stuff. And then you see resiliency, like, longer mean time between failures, operational efficiency, getting more done with less because our people are spending less time on manual tasks. That's great. It's freeing up resources to do more important work. We also, on the right, we ask people, hey, has this stuff, when you apply it to network management, improved your ability to support any major initiatives that your company is focused on, your IT organization is focused on? And you see the top three right here: data center modernization, private cloud, cloud native applications like Kubernetes, containerization, et cetera, and public cloud or multi-cloud migration. What are all those things that have in common? They are modernizing application infrastructure. Those are the top three things. AI-driven network management is enabling network teams, network operations, network engineering teams to help enterprises modernize how they build, maintain, and deliver digital services to their users, their end users, their employees, and their customers. That's very important, and it's nice to see that that's the end result of all this. Successful people who are doing very well with AI-driven network management were also more likely to select a couple secondary ones. At the bottom here, you see Internet of Things and virtual desktop infrastructure. So those are much more edge-focused as opposed to application environment focused. But so there's some opportunities to improve how things work at the edge as well. A typical, like a really important benchmark for whether or not this is worth doing is it having any effect on how well your network serves the users? Like, are they having a better experience? 69% said they saw at least some improvement in overall end user experience on their network after starting to use this stuff. 24% reported it as very significant. Like, this is really, really boosting things. We were seeing stronger improvements among the most successful users of the technology, which makes sense. And we also saw better results with people who are using commercial solutions. So like we mentioned earlier, 19% of them are using homegrown, like probably not exclusively because, it was a multiple choice question and 80%, almost 80% are using commercial stuff from networking vendors as well, and almost half are using domain agnostic commercial solutions. But the people who had homegrown AI as part of their overall approach to AI-driven network management were less likely to report better end user experience overall. So less effective at that. 92% also told us that they believe AI-driven networking leads to better business outcomes. You remember in 2021, the response to that question produced 90%. So a slight uptick in overall expectations of benefits. However, the number of people who strongly agreed with that question saying it was going to lead to better business outcomes shrank from 56% to 50% over 2 years. So while overall people are expecting some better business outcomes, the number who are expecting like extremely potent results has softened a little. Hard to say why, but it's something to keep an eye on. So how successful are people and what's holding them back? So you'll remember in 2021, 30% of people told us that they are having unconditional, like unmitigated success with their consumption of this stuff. It's gone up to 36% this year. That's the magenta pie slice on the left. And then you see almost 51% telling us that they've been somewhat successful. Those are the two big groups in any kind of question I ask about this. Like people rarely give themselves an F on something they're working on or using, like unless they are not a key stakeholder who doesn't, you know, these people are mostly like really deeply involved in this stuff, so they're not going to give themselves an F on this. They're going to give themselves a C or a B or an A. And that's what you're seeing here. 36% gave themselves an A, 51% gave themselves a B or a C. Those 51%, they see room for improvement. They know they could be doing better. Maybe they just need more time with this solution, as I'll show you in a second. That's a sentiment I saw anecdotally. Like we're not 100% where we want to be yet, so I can't really say we're fully successful. There are perception gaps. IT executives are twice as positive about their overall success as like twice as likely to say we're an unmitigated success, unconditionally successful, as people who were working as engineers, architects, admins, like technical personnel. So that tells you there's a big perception gap between the CIO's office, the director level, down to the subject matter experts who actually need to use this stuff on a daily basis. And that's something to call attention to. The CIOs of the world say, hey, I know you think this stuff's magic, but we're not quite where we need to be, and you need to lead. From a silo perspective, there's similar patterns. You see people who worked in network engineering, IT architecture, and cloud operations were the most pessimistic about success. People in the CIO suite were we're very happy about where they are. And then the IT tool engineering team. Now keep this in mind. The IT tool engineering team knows a lot about what they're doing, like they're implementing this stuff. It's their job to maintain it, but they aren't often using it. So what happens when you install and get something up and running? Between that and the day that it's like actually being used, something is going wrong. Like there's some kind of failure and handoff that appears to be happening between the people in network engineering, cloud operations, and the IT tool engineering team. Here's some individual perspectives on success based on conversations I had with people. So IT vice president at a $9 billion financial services company said that he felt he was on the right path, doing it right by taking their time. Can't just buy something and have it work. Often people are struggling to understand what AIOps means, and it takes time to explain it to them, even though these are smart people. So, explaining how these people can, so you got like a bunch of like highly certified world-class network engineers who don't really understand. You try to talk to them about how this can help them, and they're like, I don't get it. Why can't I just do what I've always done? It works. I don't know if this is going to work. Why would it work? At the bottom, you see an IT operations manager at a $15 billion financial services company who said it's hard to say if we've been successful because we're still in the crawl before we walk and run phase. I give us a 4 out of 10 right now because we're not finished with the deployment. And I'm hoping for a 7 or 8 out of 10 once we're finished. So they are like, even when we're done, I'm not going to be like saying we unblemished success is where we're going to be. Like I already know that it's not going to be as happy as I was, as glorious as I thought it would be. They were saying one of the reasons they were not, completely satisfied or feeling successful overall is because their vendor didn't deliver on everything they promised. When they bought the thing, the vendor's like, oh, we'll support these 2 use cases by the end of 2022. And now they've installed it, and the use cases are not going to be supported until the end of 2023. So, ouch. So they're like, I don't think we're ever gonna get to that 10 out of 10 because my vendor let me down. So what kind of pain points are people experiencing on the business side of things, like business issues? It's security and compliance risk. I cannot send this much data into the cloud. I do not feel comfortable with that because, a lot of AI stuff lives in the cloud because it's so resource intensive. No one wants to deploy it on premise. It's going to eat up all of your resources. So yeah, we got to push a lot of that to the cloud, and I don't like sending that data there. Skills gaps, I just mentioned, like that IT vice president talking about how they got to explain this stuff over and over again. The people that need to use it are like, I don't get it. My process is I look at these charts and these graphs and I got this dashboard that's great. And then when I need to answer a question, I go into CLI on my switches, and that's working great. I know it. There's only, you need to hire like 5 more people like me in order to make it work, but I'm doing well. Why would I need to learn how to interact with a AI thing, And when you think about skills gaps, like, have you ever played with ChatGPT? Because it takes some effort to be good at getting it to do what you want it to do and like be useful. Like it spits out stuff and you're like, that's not good. Let's try it. I'm going to ask it this way. That didn't work either. It's not really good at answering this question. I'm going to try it a different way. And so, there's skill involved in interacting with AI systems. Budget issues is a secondary thing. And a lot of the AI stuff I see coming out from networking specific vendors, the network management space and the infrastructure space, that they often, sometimes they introduce stuff that's just like included in whatever you've already got. And so it's just extra goodness. Sometimes it's like, well, now we're switching, now that we're doing all this AI stuff, we're going to switch from a perpetual license to a subscription, annual subscription. It's going to be cheaper for a few years, but then maybe it won't be as cheap as it used to be. So yeah, and then some people are like, we got an AI solution now, but it's a separate product. You want to use it? It's going to be an extra $25,000 a year. And then cultural resistance and trust. Members of the network engineering teams in our surveys were twice as likely to select that one. They don't trust this stuff. They're like, my job is based on my skills. Like my skills define my value to a company, and now you're putting some of those skills into a machine. I'm not comfortable. And then on the technical side, people are dealing with network complexity. People on the NetOps teams were more likely to struggle with that one. People working in a NOC. I think this is partly, and this was the biggest one, by the way, obviously, even though only 25% selected it, it was on a list of like 10 things. Anyway, network complexity, like, oh man, this AI system just can't figure out how my network works because there's just so many moving pieces, and it's like failing to really understand the nuances of these different domains. Also, you might have like something that only works with one of your network hardware vendors, but because it's like your network hardware vendor added some AI to its stuff and it's great, but it's kind of blind when it's looking at whatever third-party stuff you got in a multi-vendor network. Or it has to infer things without having as much deep insight into that third-party hardware. Data issues. The data I'm feeding into my AI is garbage, and so it's garbage in, garbage out. I have blind spots. I can't get all the data I want because not all of my network management tools are willing to share, set up to share all that data with an AI system. I'm lacking granularity. All kinds of stuff. Interoperability integration is, a lot of integration happens between different systems, especially if you're using like domain agnostic AI ops solutions, and you want to send you want to do like two-way integration between that and your network management tools for managing tickets, enriching tickets, automating network changes and stuff like that. It's a problem. And then algorithmic training on customer networks needs improvement. So these vendors, they spend a lot of time training their AI stuff to understand networks in general, but then it has to learn your network, and that's not going well for 1 out of 5 of them. Probably because sometimes it just takes too long, maybe, but also maybe it just, your network's too complex. So I'm gonna wrap up here with some tips on how to succeed with AI-driven networking success based on what we saw in the data. So one, build up your expertise around evaluating AI and AIOps. We talked about that, but people who told us that they're good at evaluating this stuff are also more likely to tell us that it's going well in terms of the value they're getting out of it. Also, those people also, we talked about like, how do you evaluate stuff? And there's like lots of things about how we're having lots of conversations with our vendors about algorithms. We are relying on explainable AI. We're talking to industry analysts. The people who told us that they are having lots of conversations with their peers, like reaching out to peers and saying, hey, you using this stuff? Like, what's it like? Well, those guys are doing much better. So talk to your peers. Someone that's using like a vendor that talks a lot about AI, like maybe one of the 3 sponsors of this research, go to them, be like, hey, what's your experience with that vendor? Look for opportunities everywhere. Don't confine AI-driven network management to a single domain. Like, oh, I got something that's just like really good at optimizing understanding how my Wi-Fi network's doing, or my SD-WAN, or my cloud network. No, you want something that is trying to give you an end-to-end view of customer experience from like the edge of your network all the way into the data center and the cloud. So target as many domains as possible. People who told us that they were successful with this stuff, they told us that they're applying it to a more diverse, like more parts of their network. Like it's looking at this, it's looking at that, it's looking at everything. It's not just looking at one thing. Also, people who were using domain agnostic AIOps technology for network management were having less impact on transformation of network operations. It wasn't necessarily that they're having less success, but like they were seeing less change and transformation in terms of network management processes. Like people who are using AI that came from like their network management vendors or network infrastructure vendors were more likely to tell us that AI has sort of worked its way into more of the day-to-day operations that an organization does with their networks. And then also don't let cost influence deployment administration approach. This research looked at people's preferences for where they deploy AI-driven technology, like on-prem, in the cloud, and also, do you want it to be self-administered by your team, or do you want it to be managed by the vendor or an MSP? People who told us that those decisions were driven by cost alone, or mostly by cost, like, oh, it's cheaper for us to deploy it there and have it managed in this way, they were failing more often with AI. People who told us that, like, well, we deploy it on-prem because of security and compliance reasons, or we want it managed by a third party because we feel that we don't have the right skills in place to do it well. They were less likely to tell us that they're doing badly with AI. If you have it, mandate that you use it. So I hear often that people like buy something that's going to add all this goodness to operations, not just AI stuff, but like just new tools that are supposed to be better than the old tools, and they just end up not being used. Like the operations team's like, well, yeah, okay, they spend a lot of money on this, but I'm going to continue using the open source tool that I like to do a lot of this stuff. And so that's going to happen with AIOps too. But anyway, mandate that people use it. Organizations that integrate AI into more processes do better. That's what our research showed. Like if it's impacting more day-to-day tasks, it's going to lead to more success. People who only use it after their legacy tools and processes failed to help them, they do the worst with AI. Like, don't use it as a backup. Use it to transform. And then embrace chatbots. People who think that network assistants, like chatbots that are smart about networks, are really great. They're doing really well. They're doing well with AI-driven network management. So you can integrate a chatbot on your network, and ask it questions like, how's my network doing today? What are my trouble spots? Things like that. It can sort of help you organize things and identify what to go after first, maybe perhaps more quickly than your legacy dashboards and reports. And you're probably going to see some network vendors or IT vendors in general start to use things like ChatGPT, integrate ChatGPT into their solutions, whether they're an AI-driven network management vendor or like someone that hasn't touched AI at all is going to be like, oh, let's try to use ChatGPT here to get AI in our product line as quick as possible, even though we don't really know about AI at all. So like, and you can use it, something like ChatGPT on your own without having to buy it from a network management vendor. Like I talked to one person who told me that he was like an executive for infrastructure engineering at some company. I can't remember what kind of company it was, but he said that every single engineer on his team was using the premium version of ChatGPT in some way. Like even if they couldn't get the company to pay for it, they're using it for their jobs. He said he himself had been experimenting with it and gotten like 8 hours of work done in 10 minutes. Now, I can't guarantee that anyone else is going to get those results, but he was saying like, well, I asked it to write a configuration from this router, and then I asked it to map my network, and then I asked it to start scripting things into Puppet, and it was doing it all. And then I'd look at it and be like, well, that's not good. Hey, try this, try to do it this way instead, and it would do that, and it came out, and it was like, oh, this is done. I'm ready. My automation platform is fully implemented. He might be having better results than others, but he saw the opportunity there, and he was not waiting for a vendor to start offering something like that. So there's opportunities there, and that's sort of my final thought there. So I'm gonna turn it over to Raleigh in a second for a Q&A, but this is the cover of the report that this webinar is based on. You can download it from that link. It's about 48 pages. It's got like 36 charts and graphs in it with lots of more data points than you saw here. It's got more quotes from the people I talked to one-on-one who have experience with this stuff. And I think it's pretty informative, gives you sort of a guide to what you can get out of this stuff and whether you want to spend money on it. And hopefully you'll find it useful. But now I'll turn it over to Raleigh for Q&A.
Thanks, Shamus. Let's go ahead and dive into the questions. You kind of touched on this in your summary slide, but could you define what you mean by better business outcomes with AI?
Sure. So I think what that question is trying to get at is when you transform AI, we transform network management with AI, or enhance network management with AI, level it up, so to speak, it's going to trickle down to benefits to the bottom line. I think of like when I talk to people about what kind of return on investment they're getting from a network management solution, the conversation centers on various things that contribute to that could be seen as better business outcomes. One, we have been having trouble hiring network engineers, so we don't have enough people to do what needs to be done. And our network engineers are really expensive, and it'd be great if we could unlock them and have them work on projects like application transformation, public and multi-cloud network migration. That's a business outcome that we touched on earlier in the research. Another thing is if your network, if you're like customer facing and you have SLAs in place, I've talked to people who are like, wow, when we improved network management, I was able to avoid an SLA that would have impacted 500 customers, and each customer would have gotten $13,000 in an SLA payout. So yeah, resiliency leads to things like avoidance of SLAs violations, but also customer churn and things like that. And you can use your imagination as any number of other ones, compliance violations that lead to fines, for instance, and things like that. When your network operates better with AI, all that goodness can come.
Thanks, Shamus. What kind of homegrown AIOps technology would people be building? It seems complicated.
Yeah, it is. I imagine it's complicated. I'm not an expert on like that. Some of them might be talking about how they're trying to use a chat GPT internally. For instance, all this survey came out, this survey went out like just as chat GPT was exploding in hype. But also, like I mentioned, that bank that I noticed that was just hiring all these data scientists and were working with individual algorithms and building like a homegrown AI ops solution. You can think along the lines of like, if any of you guys have worked on a network automation project, it's possible that you started with Ansible and you started like writing all this software around it, like, and created like this homegrown open solution with an open source core. Like I've talked to so many people who do that. It seems like that's happening a little bit with this whole AI thing as well, where people are going with like an open source AI solution, like I believe ChatGPT's software is open source. I could be wrong about that. And just, building stuff around it, and there's lots of algorithms out there in the public domain that are available for people to try to build something around. So I think that's what's happening. It seems like a big like people biting off more than they can chew, but maybe I'm wrong about that. We'll see how things play out.
Yeah, so definitely be interesting. Let's take one final question. Everyone is marketing AI driven stuff. How do you sort through the hype?
Okay, so it's hard to do that. Obviously, you saw in this presentation, like a lot of people are having in-depth conversations with their vendors about algorithms and training those algorithms, like developing them and training them, and trying to figure out what's real and what's just hype. It's hard to do. I recommend doing some reading. It might be hard to slog through research papers, but they're out there. But you also saw like almost half of the people in the survey were doing proofs of concept. I think that, when I talk to people, like it opens their eyes really open when they've got their hands on the stuff and are like, okay, this is different. Like this is really helpful. I can't guarantee it's going to happen with every vendor you do a POC with, but I think that's like the best way is to just get your hands on it, play with it, get some demos, see what's what network management is all about. Is this really different? Is like anomaly detection, for instance, like, okay, so you're really good at like telling me what's out of the norm. Like, okay, people have been doing that forever, but like, can you tell me why it's out of the norm? Like, why is it an anomaly? Like, what am I being attacked? Is this like some weird routing issue? What's happening? Can you go from like pattern detection to insight? Give me insight. Tell me what's happening. I guess that's like a good way to know if it's hype or not. But it's really about, getting your hands on the stuff, trying to get some high level knowledge of what all this technology is, so that you can see, like, you can start to form an opinion like, well, everyone's doing this, like everyone's used that algorithm. That's not fancy, but you're doing this, that's different. Okay, I like this. I'm no expert, but from my perspective, it's right now kind of more than an art than a science. Like the science is happening on the vendor side. For you, it's going to be an art, figuring out like, okay, let me know. I'll know it when I see it if it's really changing things for me.
Thank you, Shamus, for all these great insights. I wanted to thank our audience for joining us today. I will be sending out a follow-up email. I did just get a chat saying the URL does not work. Yes, you will need to either just type it into your browser right now because the links in the PowerPoint don't work. on Zoom, but I will send a link to the report. And as Shamus mentioned, you can also visit the sponsor sites. All or most of them will be posting that report on their site. Thank you again for joining us, and be sure to check out the follow-up email.